Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting night of NBA basketball.
With the first pick, the Detroit Pistons select Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State University.
Chandler again. Oh, what a block by Maxfield! My goodness!
The Pistons are digging in. They got the depth. They got the big men. They got the better basketball team. No doubt about it.
There's Jaden playing the passing lane. Skies a jam. Dynamite dunk, and the crowd loves it.
Pistons need a three, and they have just under 3 seconds to do it. Here's Chauncey Billups. Here it is. He's got it. He's got it. Chauncey Billups hits the three. Overtime. Amazing. Out of bounds. Detroit basketball.
Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Network. I'm your host, Mike Anguilano. Joining me this week is Aaron Johnson. Aaron, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Mike. We've got a jam-packed agenda today, doing without our friend Jasper Apollonia. Hopefully we'll have him back next week, but got a lot to talk about. The Pistons making a big-time free agency acquisition. I know that's going to be one of the topics we hit on, so super stoked to be here with you and ready to talk about all that's going on in Pistons land.
Yes, all that's going on. We do have a lot on the agenda, so we're going to hop right into it. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's podcast, and it is BetOnline. And the last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling. College basketball is ready to go. I've already dropped a couple of bets on college basketball. BetOnline remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests between the NFL, college football, UFC, NHL, all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for all your wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops betting action, along with every sport available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. So head on over to BetOnline today. And remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. When you use BetOnline, again, that promo code is BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use BetOnline. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, guess who
Aaron,
bet?
we don't really have like a... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to guess who bet on Michigan State minus 16.5 against James Madison opening night.
Brutal.
Yeah, this guy. So much for that, right?
Hilarious. James Madison, who's coming to play my Kent State Golden Flashes, I think either tonight or tomorrow.
Hey, I think there's speaking of Kent State, I think there's a Kent State player on the Motor City Cruise roster, but I can't remember.
There is. I believe it's Malik Jacobs.
Okay.
I think. I saw that the other day. I saw them tweet it out. Kent State is horrendous at football, but they have a good basketball program seemingly every time. Yeah. A couple of sports bets already popped off. I was down to 52 cents, I think, on FanDuel, and I've slowly brought it all the way back up to $18. So look at me.
There we go.
Savant. I can buy one movie ticket now. Okay, let's get into some Pistons talk. Let's just get the easy one out of the way, if you don't mind, and that would be the Pistons signing Kevin Knox off the free agent heap. He agreed to a one-year deal with Detroit on Wednesday, according to The Athletic. Pistons have a ton of injuries, particularly on the wing, whether that be Isaiah Livers, Bojan Bogdanovic, just to name a few, Monty Morris as well, although Kevin Knox mostly would fit in on the wing. Ton of injuries. He played with the Pistons last year, 42 games. He averaged 5.6 points, 2.6 boards in 14 minutes. He did a little bit better, actually, in Portland when I was looking at those numbers. I think he was up to like 9 points a game in 17 minutes. He was eventually cut by the Blazers ahead of training camp as they have their youth movement. So bring back Kevin Knox, uses the last roster space with that one spot left. Troy Weaver decided to use it on Knox. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on bringing in Kevin Knox? Because I guess it makes sense with all the injuries that they have, but you don't want to be taking time away from any of the young players either. I feel like this is just a depth signing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like sitting here freaking out like a lot of people were on social media when the news broke out on Wednesday, or was it Tuesday? I don't even know at this point. But I'm not freaking out like they were. Like, why'd you sign Kevin Knox? Like, let's face it, Kevin Knox is a end of bench guy. The Pistons have 5 rotation players out. They are playing two-way players a night right now already, less than 10 games into the season. The unfortunate thing is, like, I think I'd rather just see what Stanley Amude can give you, especially after what he's already shown he can do. Like, he had a 15-point game where he knocked down like 3 threes, got to the rim a little bit. Like, and I don't know if Kevin Knox is going to play ahead of him, but it's also, I understand the viewpoint of like, here we are, less than 10 games into the year. The Pistons are already playing two-way guys, are already having to sign these end-of-bench roster guys because the season's already off to such a bad start. So I get the frustration there, but I'm not freaking out like people are about Kevin Knox. Like, he's going to come in, he's probably going to play a little bit here and there, going to provide some floor spacing, shoot the ball. It's a little bit longer, gives them a little more size than they had. I think the bigger deal with this is the fact that this probably means they're going to be missing Bojan Bogdanovic and Isaiah Livers and Joe Harris for some more time. Like, Harris is out the next 2 weeks at least until he's being reevaluated. I think Livers is out until at least the last week of November before he's reevaluated. Would have liked to have gotten some news and update on Bogdanovic, but we haven't gotten that yet. So you have to assume that it's not going to be back within the near future. The Pistons are banged up and they're playing without so many roster guys right now. They kind of needed a body. So they're not going to be able to go out and sign some 5-time All-Star 10 games into the season. They were picking from a very niche group of players, and Kevin Knox has familiarity with the city, with Troy Weaver, knows some of the players on the roster, was literally here last year. It probably makes more sense than it doesn't at this point. So not all up in arms over the move, not sitting here saying, oh, what a masterclass move either, but the Pistons probably needed to end up using that last roster spot with how many injuries they had, and Kevin Knox is a guy. So
Kevin Knox is a guy is a good tagline for this whole thing. Yeah, I would only be upset if he is taking time away from Stanley. I actually forgot about the Joe Harris injury. That's a great point. They are down pretty much every wing. Every shooting wing that they have is currently injured. Not that Kevin Knox is going to solve any of those problems, but he is just a depth piece. I would only be upset if he is taking minutes away from Stanley or any of the other young players. Yeah, they kind of probably had their hand forced in having to sign somebody with that last spot, just based on the mounting injuries that are just piling up. Yeah, I'm not up in arms either. A little bit unfortunate to see one of the bigger draft busts end up back on your roster as a necessity, but at this point, he is just a guy, as you said. Okay, if you're ready to move on, I'm ready to move on to maybe talking a little bit about Jaden Ivey and the rotation of the Pistons right now, and really, I guess the whole guard situation outside of Cade for right now. We could talk about Jaden Ivey. We could talk about the killer, Marcus Sasser, who played out of his mind last night against the Milwaukee Bucks, or now 2 days ago, for those of you who are listening. And then Killian Hayes, who has just kind of like hummed along at a pretty steady average to slightly below average clip. Aaron, I will let you pick. Which player do you want to talk about first? Who are you itching to just like give a take on?
I think people want to hear about Jaden Ivey. I think there's a lot going on with him right now. He started the season coming off the bench, playing behind Killian Hayes. It was Now he's already ruled out for Friday night's game. He's with an illness. It's going to be the 4th game he's missed due to an illness. People are reading into that. There haven't been a lot of details about what he's dealing with outside of that. He's dealing with an illness, and people are taking that silence as there's something more going on, which has people talking about Jaden Ivey potentially being moved. I think people want to hear about Jaden Ivey. I think people want to talk about Jaden Ivey. And it's just not been a good start to the year if you're Jaden Ivey. That's the unfortunate reality. Coming off the bench, now you're sick. I don't know if I guess it's trade rumors. There's not really been anything major from any major outlet or reporter coming out saying, oh, there's trade rumors surrounding Jaden Ivey. But Brian Windhorst of ESPN did say he's heard that Jaden Ivey, or imagines Jaden Ivey's not thrilled about coming off the bench. Usually when a reporter of that status says something like that, there's something else to it. Where
there's smoke, there's fire.
Right. And Brian Windhorst is the exact type of reporter that kind of leads you on with a thought of his that's backed up really by conversations he's had with, whether it's agents or front office staff members, people in the know. So there's a lot surrounding Jaden Ivey. I think it would be great if there was some sort of information that came out about what he's dealing with, when he's expected back, if he's actually involved in rumors. There was a tweet from Vinny Goodwill after the Bucks game about how the next few days are very interesting when talking about Jaden Ivey and Marcus Sasser. So people were taking that as like, oh, is something going on behind the scenes? Are the Pistons working on a deal with moving Jaden Ivey? So there's just been so much going on with him, and a lot of it's been tumultuous talk. So yeah, it's not been an ideal start to the season, and there's so much going on with that. I think everyone's just looking for clarity on the situation. It felt like we were maybe trending towards Jaden Ivey working his way back into the starting lineup after a couple of good games. His last one against the Pelicans, where he was playing very well off the bench, although he was then seemingly benched in the 4th quarter after leading the team back into the game in the 3rd. But then he's out with an illness out of the blue, and we really haven't heard much since. So a lot going on with Jaden Ivey, and really none of it seems to be good, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems like every week we have a different, a small blip of information that becomes available. His dad tweeting about stuff that Czar has thankfully in the group chat been able to keep track of, to like being sick all of a sudden. And, I don't know if this is just how ESPN denotes it, but he's denoted as DMP away from team. That might just be how the website tracks it, but he's averaging 20 minutes a game. That's 10 minutes less per game than last year. He's averaging 11 points, 2.5 assists, 40% from 3, 49% from the floor. Monty's been very vocal about defense first, and that's why Killian Hayes has gotten the starts, because Hayes prioritizes defense more than Jaden Ivey does, or at least that seems to be the reasoning behind this change in the rotation. It's a little scary that there hasn't been any real clarity from the beat on Ivey, other than he's sick, he's not going to be playing, and they don't know when he's going to be not sick anymore and good enough to play. So that's a little bit on the concerning side. And like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. And when Brian Windhorst, normally, we like to clown him a little bit as, being the mouthpiece for a lot of players. But the fact of the matter is he knows so much of what's being talked about in the NBA that he can't talk about on ESPN or the Hoop Collective. So when he does say something like, yeah, Jaden Ivey can't be thrilled with X, or any player can't be thrilled with X, there's probably some level of truth to it. So I feel like we're headed swiftly down a path of Jaden Ivey trade spots, especially with the way the rotation is rounding out. And with him not playing doesn't give the Pistons any, additional sense of what he can bring to this roster. He's kind of been shoved into the Colin Sexton 6-man role that was put into effect sort of when Darius Garland started to take off and Sexton kind of got pushed into a different role. He's taken that on a little bit, and much like Pistons fans, Caps fans were very upset with what was happening to another very high draft pick, the first pick post LeBron leaving the second time, and wondering why isn't this kid playing. We're heading towards that level of vitriol right now. I don't really know what to make of it. I don't know what his trade value is. I don't know if a guy in his second year is going to command an ask out. I know the NBA is all about player empowerment, but it just doesn't seem like a situation where he's going to do that or should be doing that or good enough to do that. But it is very odd that we haven't gotten any clarity other than Monty prioritizes defense. That's why Killian Hayes is starting.
Yeah, and I get that. Like, people talking about last night during the Bucks game, oh, why didn't Stanley Amude come in for that final possession? Like, there's a chain of command in the NBA, and as an NBA coach, you have to balance a locker room. You have to balance players. You have to balance relationships. You have to balance egos, and it's like there are certain things as a coach that you have to do that maybe don't make the most sense in terms of X's and O's, but make sense in terms of running an NBA team, running a locker room, managing your players, managing the relationships amongst players, and managing relationships with your players. And so, like, the decision to start Killian Hayes makes sense for some of those reasons. Monty Williams wants to establish an identity of being a defensive-minded team, a team that's going to play hard every single possession, and build that identity defensively. The offense will come with the defense in his philosophy. And if Jaden Ivey's not giving you that effort defensively, if he's not making those stops defensively, and let's be honest, in the games that he's played this year, maybe he hasn't been a bad defender, but he's certainly not been a good defender. Killian Hayes is a guy that does give you some better output defensively. I don't think Killian Hayes is a great defender by any stretch of the imagination, but Monty Williams has made it clear he wants to build a defensive identity. He wants that to be the identity of this team. And in his first season and his first games, he can't just bow out of that tone, bow out of building that identity because Jaden Ivey's a top 5 pick, had a big season last year, and to the public deserves to be in the starting lineup. So we, in the public, the people that aren't in the locker room, the people that aren't in the practices, don't know everything that's going on. And that's why I think because we don't know everything going on, that's why we read into certain things like Jaden Ivey being listed out for 4 games in a row with an illness, and there's been no other details about it. So we read into it because we don't know everything that's going on. But there's so much more that goes into being a coach of a team, really at any level, than just what gives me the best X and O's results. You have to manage so much more than that. So I think everybody knows Jaden Ivey is probably a better overall basketball player than Killian Hayes. But if Monty Williams wants to establish that defensive identity, wants that to be this team's calling card, he's got to show that those guys that do play the best defense in the team are going to get minutes. And that's why Asar Thompson started right away. That's why Isaiah Stewart's been given a lot of looks, and Jalen Duren's been given a lot of looks. So it's like there's a method to it, even if people don't see it. And that's fine. And the thing is, you can understand that method and you can still not agree with it. That's fine. And that's your right as a fan or as an analyst, whatever. You can agree with it or disagree with it, but you can also acknowledge, like, hey, I understand why the coach wants to do this. Still don't agree with it, but I understand why. So there's a lot of factors that go into a decision like that in the public, maybe not everyone gets. They happen for a reason.
So with Killian Hayes on the floor, the Pistons defense is in the 37th percentile. They allow 3.6 additional points per 100 possessions with Jaden Ivey. It's just a smidge worse. It's like 5.8, the 27th percentile. So team defense is a little bit better with Killian on the floor. And I think there will be just a measuring act that Monty has to do of like, okay, if you're measuring the offense with Ivey, yeah, his defense is maybe a little bit more questionable, but what he provides on the offensive end is, should outweigh that. And, I think that internal calculus is that Killian Hayes does so little on offense that it doesn't harm he doesn't harm the offense as much because he doesn't do as much, because his usage is lower than Jaden Ivey, who admittedly, while a very fast player, can get downhill, very athletic, and, has the ability to finish at the rim, and so far has shown a little bit more shooting. He is a high usage player that when he can sometimes dribble the ball out of the air. He can sometimes be not very efficient. He started off his rookie year not being very efficient, gradually came into his own and became a much better, more controlled player. That could be part of the calculus, as well, as that Killian Hayes doesn't do a whole lot on the offensive end. He's a fairly low ceiling, but maybe like medium-ish floor level type of offensive player. And that maybe reassures Monty that, he's going to be sticking to defense first and offense second. And if that's the identity that you're trying to put down, I guess that does make a little bit of sense why you'd want to go to Killian, but it still doesn't resolve or doesn't give any clarity to Jaden Ivey's position. And he was one of the core pieces. I mean, he's one of the pieces we were excited about coming into the year, evolving with Cade Cunningham in the backcourt, and it just has not happened. So yeah, it's a little bit concerning.
Let me be clear, just because I understand why Monty Williams does start Killian Hayes doesn't mean I agree with it. Like, I'm one of those people that
oh, sure, absolutely.
I don't. That's not who I would start. And so, like, whether it's Jaden Ivey, whether it's Marcus Sasser, like, in my mind, I don't think Killian Hayes does enough defensively to make up for what he is offensively. And people say, oh, look at the last 6 games, he's shooting 36% from the 3-point line. It's like, okay, the bar is very, very low right now. The bar is incredibly low for what provides value out of Killian Hayes. And it's like, you see how the team's dynamic changes when Marcus Sasser comes in. The Bucks game is a perfect example. And it's like, you would imagine things look better with Jaden Ivey out on the court, or Alec Burks out on the court, who's also been out now for the last.
Or if we are to believe what the rotation would be when fully healthy, Bojan Bogdanovic was going to be playing the 2.
Or Monte Morris. I mean, there's a million different, there's 5-6 guys that we've just named. And, it's just like, I don't believe Killian Hayes is the best option. Like, he could quite frankly be the worst option on the roster outside of maybe like Joe Harris. But it's Monty Williams trying to set his identity, build his identity, and make guys earn those minutes. So it's maybe not what we all agree with on the outside, but that's just how it is in that locker room.
So we were kind of touching on all of the guards, but we've talked about Killian Hayes a lot more. So let's roll into Killian Hayes a little bit. He's been the starting 2 next to Cade. 10 points, almost 5 assists per game, 32% from 3, 39% from the floor. Almost 2 stocks per game, steal and a block for those uninitiated. Kind of is what he is. I mean, his 3-point percentage is up 5% from his career average. Almost everything is pretty much the same. The stocks are the same. His assists are a little higher. His points are a little higher. I mean, he's playing a little bit better, and that's probably just a byproduct of the offense being more competent with Cade Cunningham on the floor. So he's probably benefiting a little bit more from that. But the most polarizing player over the last 3.5 years so far has been Killian Hayes. Do you have any like, I mean, obviously you're not in the camp that he should be the starting 2, which is totally fine and makes a lot of sense based on what he is as a player and what he has been as a player, which is mostly kind of disappointing, aside from a couple of games, aside from a stretch, like a 15-game stretch last year where he looked like he made the leap of all leaps that everybody's been waiting for. Assuming health is back and Bogdanovic is back and Harris is back, assuming health, where does Killian Hayes fit in the rotation in your mind? Is he even in the rotation?
I mean, in my mind, if you're getting Alec Burks, Monte Morris, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Jaden Ivey back, like, I don't see minutes for Killian Hayes. Marcus Sasser has forced that hand. Alec Burks has played incredible, was playing good basketball before he got hurt. You have Cade Cunningham. Monte Morris was a very, very good backup point guard last year and did not come to Detroit to play the Corey Joseph role or not see the core. Like, he's gonna get minutes. I think, like I said, if there's 6-7 guys that deserve minutes and that play the guard spot or play between the 1, 2, and a little bit of 3, Killian and Joe Harris are at the bottom of the rotation in my mind, and it's kind of like everyone else is pretty clearly ahead of them. I don't see a world where he's getting minutes over Alec Burks when he's back, or Bojan Bogdanovic when he's back, or I still think Jaden Ivey's going to figure things out. If he's still in Detroit, he's gonna figure things out. He's way too talented of a player to just not get on the court and play 15 minutes a night. Like, he does too much for you. And Marcus Sasser has proven he cannot sit anymore. Like, Marcus Sasser should be in the starting lineup right now, pretty much, but isn't. So it's like you have all these guys
Should be.
minutes
Absolutely.
over Killian Hayes, and people will say, "Oh, look at what he's done over his last 6 games." There's a lot of guys that have great 6-game spurts. Recent memory, guys that haven't panned out in Detroit that have done that. Guys that come to mind are players like Sekou Doumbouya and Stanley Johnson. Everyone can have
you're Stanley.
2
How could you?
3-week spurts where they look like competent players and do the things that you envision them being able to do. But the best NBA players are consistent. And if history has shown anything, unfortunately, Killian Hayes has not been a consistently good enough player to the point where I think he should be playing over guys that have higher potential in Jaden Ivey and Marcus Sasser, and guys that give you more than Hayes does in players like Alec Burks, Cade Cunningham, and Bojan Bogdanovic.
No, I totally agree. And there's enough good players ahead of him that when everyone's healthy, I agree. I don't know what the minutes look like. I mean, he seems like he's evolved to competent backup point guard that isn't going to kill you, which is valuable for plenty of teams. But the Pistons made a serious investment in him, and I understand that kind of sticks with players, or rather that sticks with fans, that you drafted him very high. This is what you're getting out of him, is 32% from 3. But so far, that's a career high. I think he's mostly been fine. He's been perfectly fine. I think Marcus Sasser is kind of more able to do the things that we kind of need Killian to do, like the catch and shoot threes. I mean, Marcus Sasser is a gunner. I said this before the podcast. The guy went on an absolute heater against the Bucks and pretty much brought the Pistons back and almost carried them to a victory. 26 points. He shot 42% from deep, 64% from the floor. He's had 19 or more points in 3 of the last 4 games against New Orleans. Phoenix did not play as well against Golden State, but then dropped to 26 against the Bucks. Yes, granted, Giannis Antetokounmpo was ejected for a really terrible call. But point being, the guy is going to shoot the basketball. And I think that's what they need from Killian Hayes, is to just maybe be a little bit more aggressive, particularly on catch and shoot threes. A little bit. He's shooting 32%. That's not bad. That's passable for what he has been. Is it good? No. Is it passable for what he has been? Yeah, it's mostly passable. But let's talk about Marcus Sasser, because you brought up an excellent point of this kid needs to probably be in the starting lineup yesterday. And I completely agree. I think he needs to be in the starting lineup. If you're really upset with Killian Hayes, boy, Marcus Sasser is the run and gun type of shooting guard that would look awfully good next to Cade Cunningham. The defense might suffer a little bit because he is only 6'2". I think Killian's a little bit yeah, he's 6'5". So you're losing a little bit of length in the backcourt. Might impact the defense and passing lanes and deflections and all that stuff. But undeniably, Marcus Sasser is a shooter. And I mean, it's just hard to deny the fact that the Pistons offense goes cold pretty often because of their lack of shooting. And you have a young shooter who seems unfazed by the moment. I mean, he was hitting fall away threes and getting into the paint and throwing up teardrops and they're falling. Seems more fearless and like he has an idea of what to do on the offensive end in a way that Killian just doesn't. And that's really valuable to Detroit right now, seeing as their shooters are all injured. I'm on board with the Marcus Sasser starting train. How has his play impacted your feeling on the backcourt in general? Has it made Killian Hayes more expendable? Has it made, other guys in the backcourt maybe a little bit more expendable at the trading deadline? Or how are we feeling about Marcus Sasser? Because I think some people feel like I think the general consensus amongst people is like he's like basically a second round pick, but he was a first round pick. And he's kind of, he was one of those guys that was on the fringe heading into training camp of like, he'll probably, maybe he'll make the roster, he'll probably be with the Crews, but he's a guy that's injected himself directly into the rotation and hopefully, or at least so far, it looks like he should be in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, what he's done is nothing short of incredible. I mean, you've been really, really happy with what Asar Thompson's given you as a rookie this year. Marcus Sasser's not too far behind with the way that he's playing basketball right now. I mean,
and by the way, he's a year older than Killian Hayes.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, those guys that played 4 years of college basketball are a little bit older. They tend to get overlooked in the draft process at this point, and they tend to fall to the late first, early second. And it's like sometimes,
like Sadiq Bey,
you draft a guy that is younger and maybe has more quote unquote potential, but maybe sometimes just draft a guy that's already proven he can play and has already gotten better every year that he played in college, where you have more film against higher level competition than just one season where before that he was playing in high school, more than likely against a bunch of kids he was way, way bigger, better, more athletic and talented than. So Marcus Sasser's just come in and he hasn't really necessarily looked like a rookie. He's looked like a guy that can come out and give you 25, 30 minutes a night and play competitive basketball on both sides of the floor, shooting over 60% on 2-pointers, over 50% on 3-pointers, giving you a steal a game, giving you double-digit points, giving you 3 assists. Like, he's doing so much. And I think a really good comparison for him is kind of like that Desmond Bane or Tyrese Maxey kind of volume scorer type guy, drafted a little bit later. I mean, he's been absolutely awesome. And I think we've already seen people saying, and I don't necessarily agree with this after just 9 games, but it's like, okay, Marcus Sasser's the guy to build around long-term alongside Cade Cunningham in the backcourt. They can move on from Jaden Ivey. I think that's maybe a little bit of an overreaction after 9 games of a rookie year, but nonetheless, the returns from Sasser have been absolutely incredible. And you have to wonder that without all of these injuries that Detroit's had to Burks and Morris and Bogdanovich and Ivy, like, would we have known Marcus Sasser can do this yet? I mean, the opportunity he's gotten with these injuries, he's taken it and run with it. And I don't think there was a clear role for him had this team been fully healthy at the beginning of the year. But now he's forced the team's hand. And I can't imagine a world where he's not in the rotation when these guys are back and healthy, even if they do all come back, because he's played so well and he's doing things that are repeatable and consistent. Like, he's knocked down a lot of tough shots. He's knocked down a bunch of open shots. Like, he's doing everything you need to do. And what you appreciate about him is similar to what Asar Thompson gives you, in that they go out there and compete. They don't stop competing. They don't stop giving effort. They are running around trying to make plays on both sides of the court. And, for a team that's 2-7, has a bunch of issues, guys like that are hard to keep on the bench. And Sasser has certainly exceeded expectations. But it's also something that we talked about when the Pistons had the offseason that they had. And, they traded for Joe Harris and They traded for Monty Morris, and it's like, okay, you have 2 more guards. You're bringing back Cade Cunningham. You're bringing back Jaden Ivey. You didn't move off Killian Hayes. How are you going to use this first-round pick that you traded up and gave up assets to acquire? And their hands were kind of forced into having to play him because of injuries. And like I said, he's taken it, run, and completely capitalized on it. We're having conversations about him that, quite frankly, I did not think we would be having. And I don't know who would have really thought we'd be having these, at least this early into this season. So,
Yeah.
Huge amount of kudos to what Marcus Sasser has done. He's been stellar this year.
Shooting 50% from 3. Hard to keep a player like that not in the rotation. You'll live with the defensive shortcomings because he is another 6'2" point guard. You'll live with it. The defense with him on the floor is in the 32nd percentile. It's actually a little bit better than when Jaden Ivey is on the floor. And the offense is, right at about 50th percentile. It's almost flat even, but there's no denying that the shooting is a real weapon, and it's going to be very difficult to remove him from the rotation when some of these guys get healthy, when Monty Morris gets healthy, when Bojan Bogdanovic gets healthy. And, I do think that his play has maybe recalibrated Detroit's thinking for long-term stuff, maybe a little bit. And maybe not like, oh, we can trade Jaden Ivey. It's probably of like more, oh, this is what we need the 2 guard to do on a more consistent basis, whoever that is. That's what we need to fit next to Cade, because clearly something is working. He sparked that comeback yesterday, and it was really fun to watch. I had the Bucks stream on or with their broadcast, and their broadcast crew was just, it's a good sign when the opposing commentators are going like, oh, every time a shot falls, or they're going, oh, wow, when a shot falls because a guy is so hot. And really fun to watch. And not going to have that happen, obviously, all the time. Hard to expect that. But he's not afraid of the moment, and he's not afraid to shoot. And those 2 things will get you awfully far on a team that is so devoid of offense due to injuries. And as a guy that could take a little bit of pressure off of Cade, who has been up and down this year. I think mostly up, more so than down. The turnovers, something that we talked about earlier, kind of unfortunate that they're that high, but he is a high usage player, and that's kind of just what happens. His usage this year, and this will be our segue into the Cade Cunningham discussion, he is in the 100th percentile. He is number 1 for his position, according to Cleaning the Glass, in terms of usage. He's higher than, Cam Thomas is really high. He is really high for wings. He's categorized as a wing on Cleaning the Glass, so he is at the 100th percentile in terms of usage. I think he's been more good than bad this year. We were talking about the turnovers earlier. But what are your thoughts so far on Cade? We're 2 weeks into the season now at this point. What are your early returns on Cade Cunningham coming back into the fold? I think that first game against the Miami Heat, we were all like, oh, he's as good as advertised. This is what we've been missing. I think it's still been up and down. I mean, the shooting has come and gone. He was 2 for 8 yesterday from deep, but again, it's undeniable that he is the alpha. 33 points against the Bucks, 21 points against the Golden State Warriors. Against Phoenix, he put up another 26. He put up 30 against Portland. Clearly the alpha male. But what are your early thoughts on Cade coming back and being the heliocentric player that I think the Pistons have been counting on him being?
Yeah, there's been a mix of good and bad from Cade Cunningham. The good is he's averaging 24 points and 7 assists a game. He's been healthy. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's doing a lot of good things. And, the efficiency's been pretty hit or miss. Let's be fair. I think it's definitely taken a hit in the last 4 games or so where he's not shooting the ball as well, especially from the 3-point line. His numbers have completely drifted off from where he was in the preseason and the first 5 or so games of the year. But the bad is he has 10 more assists than any other player in the NBA. He averages just about 5.5 turnovers per game. He only gets to the line 4.7 times a game. And for a guy that has that high usage and has the ball in his hands that much, you expect him to turn the ball over, but it's concerning that A, he's turning the ball over, B, he doesn't really get to the free throw line, yet he has the ball in his hands so much. And, the efficiency, the turnovers, the lack of free throws, that stuff all sort of adds up, and it makes it tough to look at the fact that he's still averaging 24 and 7. And what's really just his second season in the league. He lost so much time last year, only played 11 games. It's really his second year in the league in that regard, in terms of the amount of games that he's played. And the other fact is, this roster, these lineups just do not fit him right now. And it should look better once guys get healthy, if they ever all are able to. But it's just not great for him when he's sitting on the court with Killian Hayes, Sar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren, and there's just no spacing for him to work with. You look down the stretch in that Milwaukee game, even with Sasser on the court instead of Killian Hayes, the Bucks just got into that zone and dared Asar Thompson and dared Isaiah Stewart to outshoot them from the 3-point line. They couldn't get the ball inside to Jalen Duren. And that's what teams are going to do in that situation. They're going to not allow Cunningham to get a shot off from inside. He's going to have to either settle for a junked up mid-range shot, or he's going to have to trust those guys out there to make outside shots. And the fit for him with the group that's usually on the court with him is just not great. And that's why the numbers got so much better when Alec Burks was on the court. And if you had Cunningham on the court with, 2 other shooters rather than just Burks, like, you'd imagine the numbers would be better. There's good, there's bad. You have to be willing to recognize both. And you have to hope that things get better as he gets more comfortable, as guys get healthier, and he can play with better fits on the court, better lineup situations. But you also have to be willing to acknowledge the turnovers are an issue. The turnovers are the biggest issue, because they're not turnovers, like, they're turnovers that can be avoided. The lazy passes, right? The lazy dribbling, the things that, the defense didn't make some great play to get in front of and dive on the floor or anything. You threw a bad pass out of bounds. You threw a bad pass off your teammate's foot. You got lazy with your handle coming off a screen. So there are things that are fixable, but you also have to recognize that they're a problem, and those are things that hurt the Pistons.
Yeah, I was just sorting through some of the lineups with him in it, which, by the way, you are not kidding about the turnovers. His turnover percentage is 18.2, which is pretty high. That's, again, the 8th percentile, according to Cleaning the Glass. That's right around like Dylan Brooks, Zaire Williams area. But his usage is awfully high, and that, again, is just a byproduct. But the lineup thing is interesting. Lineups with him and Alec Burks at the 1 are like a plus 71 differential. It's pretty crazy. You put a competent shooter next to him, and it, like, massively changes. And that's with Isaiah Stewart in the lineup too. Yeah, plus 71.8 overall with him and Burks on at the same time. In 113 possessions, they have a plus minus differential plus 28.3. So personnel is definitely an impact next to Cade Cunningham. And we kind of always thought that, kind of always knew that if you put shooters around him and allow him to get to the hole and break down a defense and then kick it out, or you force defenses to go scrambling back to the 3-point line, because that's where they have to cover those competent shooters around him, that, it just makes the offense flow a lot more. just work out a little bit better. As opposed to clogging the paint right now. I mean, we've seen the screenshots on Twitter/X of 4 defenders on Cade at like the free throw line as he's driving to the rim, and nobody covered on the perimeter, and just have to force up some junk and hope that you get fouled, which he's not doing at. He's not getting to the line, and maybe that's a byproduct of refs and whatnot. And there's other things in play there, but his foul drawing is, just to pull it up since I had cleaning the glass up, he's getting fouled on almost 10% of his shot attempts, which is so far a career high. That's in like around the Jaylen Brown range for forward. So it's still an evolving situation with him, and the guy's getting healthy, I think, will give us a really good ability to see what's going to stick rest of the year and maybe into next year, especially for some of those younger players. But I think so far it's undeniable, and I've said undeniable like 4 times. It's undeniable that he is the guy. He has he puts up a 30-point performance, and to be honest, it really didn't look like that much effort. His play against the Miami Heat on opening night, it didn't look like he was laboring whatsoever, getting to his spots, forcing stuff up at the rim, and it looked pretty good, playing good defense with his size, distributing the basketball. It all looked very calm, cool, and collected, and we are continuing to see that as the season unfolds, and despite players going down around him, he's continuing to exude those traits that you were hoping to see out of him. And just because I've done this with everybody else in the backcourt, 24 points per game, 7 assists per game, on right around 4 boards, like 5.5-ish turnovers a game, almost 6. Still an evolving situation though. And like I said, getting better shooters on the floor next to him will really give the Pistons a good assessment of what kind of player should be playing next to him. And hopefully that player is already on the roster.
Yeah, I think it'll be telling once this team is able to get back Burks, is able to get back Bogdanović, and even, a guy like Isaiah Livers, the different lineup combinations across the board that open up with more shooting, with more versatility offensively around Cade Cunningham. I think it will be telling to see how the numbers differentiate in those groups compared to the ones now that are lacking spacing, more defensive focused, more size focused. So I think there's been a mix of good and bad. Cade Cunningham is still 22 years old. He's coming back to a team that is banged up, coming back to a team that he only played 11 games for last year and sat out a long, long time due to a serious injury. It was never going to be perfect from the jump. Cade wasn't coming back and putting up 38 and 8 on 45 and 38% shooting. Like, it just wasn't going to work like that. That's not a realistic expectation. And I think this is more realistic. He's 22. He's in a tough spot. He's still putting up big numbers, but there are obvious things that he has to work on that are still hurting this team. It's really that simple.
Yep. I think that's a good capping point there for this discussion on the backcourt. Aaron, we've made our way through all of our topics for today. Do you have any thoughts on the game against the Philadelphia 76ers?
I mean, Philadelphia is a wrecking crew right now. There was, a lot of worrying about what was going to happen with them after the James Harden trade. And they're 6-1, best team in the East in terms of record. They've been incredible. Joel Embiid's playing like an MVP, 32 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists for him, like taking a leap there. Tyrese Maxey is awesome. They're playing really, really good basketball. Not a great matchup for Detroit, but we'll see if they can battle with them like they did against Milwaukee on Wednesday night.
Yeah, that was a good battle. Joel Embiid is going to be tough. They are they're a very interesting team of just, it seems like they're an entire team. It's very Nick Nurse like from the Raptors, where it seemed like they just kept throwing quality players at you. And you're like, where the hell is this coming from? Where's Kelly Oubre coming from, shooting the way that he is shooting? Getting all this depth. Oh, they have KJ Martin. Oh, they have all these players, and it's like, how is this possible that they're still playing this well? It's like a team of bench guys plus Maxey and Embiid, and they're playing exceedingly well. And this is Detroit's first in-season tournament game, correct? They were not part of the first round of games.
They were not. No,
they were not. So this is the first one. Yeah, they're just the Sixers are just a tough team. They just are. Patrick Beverley, Tobias Harris, quality players. Did you see the picture of Nick Batum's finger though?
No, I don't know.
Broken or dislocated. Oh, don't go search it.
I don't like watching those kind of injuries and that kind of stuff. But no, it's got some dogs. I mean, you have two very good players in Embiid and Maxey, and then you have, just like I said, dogs that will go out there and fight for you defensively. Patrick Beverley, DeAnthony Melton, PJ Tucker was on the team, not there anymore, but they've just got guys
Robert Covington, they just got guys. Exactly.
Got some good scorers that are capable of having some bigger games than Tobias Harris and Kelly Oubre. Like they're not a perfect team, but they're very good, and now they have a few extra assets that they can use if they want to turn them quickly.
Yep.
Try to get another guy to galvanize this team, and I imagine that'll be the plan when you have a player like Joel Embiid on the roster playing in.
And when you have a GM like Daryl Morey, I mean, he's always looking for the next deal or the next acquisition to make a splash, and they got the assets now. I think it'll be a fun game. I'm interested in seeing Duren go up against Embiid. I'm interested to see how Maxey is, with assuming that the starting lineup will be Cade and Killian in the backcourt, dealing with a little bit of that extra length. The Sixers did beat Boston, and Boston has been crowned the Eastern Conference champions already by many people because of them getting Drew Holiday. So Sixers are no slouch, even though they don't have James Harden. They are still a very quality team. So be very fun to see a couple of interesting matchups there between some of the younger guys on the Pistons and some of the more exciting /veteran /MVP winner type guys for the Sixers. Aaron, any other thoughts before we wrap up this edition of the podcast, this non-Jasper edition?
Weird without Jasper. I feel like I haven't podcasted without him in a long time. But no, we hit on a lot today. I like that we kind of just bounced around, and it seemed like a lot of our discussion just kind of flowed with one another. So I thought that was good. And I know we kind of go off on subtopics and rants here and there, but I thought today was a good show. And
that's fine. That's fine. The people love Mitch McGary.
Oh, I love that deep cut. I know there are people out there that have been listening since the Mitch McGary days, so I love that deep cut right there.
Those were days. Those were some days. We've been doing this for a while, and hopefully we'll be doing it for a while more. And hopefully you'll all be sticking with us as we continue to cover the Detroit Pistons season. Hopefully get some healthy players back and can accurately assess this team. And when that happens, because it's going to happen, we hope that you'll be sticking around with us as we continue forward with the Palace of Pistons podcast. And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. I'd like to thank my co-host Aaron Johnson for coming on as we coordinated at the very last second to see who could do this show. And I'd like to thank our sponsor for this week as well. That's BetOnline. And if you haven't used BetOnline, go ahead and use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use BetOnline. So again, for my co-host Aaron Johnson, I'm Mike Anguilano. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, part of the Believe Network, and we will see you all next time.